So, the next part is the introduction about this text, about the Gospel of John. Who is the author? Christian tradition historically has attributed it to John the Apostle, son of Zebedee, and one of Jesus' 12 apostles. I am one who believes also that John was Jesus' cousin, and we'll be looking at that in a few minutes. John's gospel is closely related in style and content to the three surviving Johannine epistles, which we have in the Bible as 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. And many commentators treat these four books and the book of Revelation as having been written by the same author. I am someone who holds to that position as well. This is not, however, a universal view. According to Stephen L. Harris in his 2006 book, Understanding the Bible, regarding the epistles, he says, quote, most scholars believe that the same person wrote all three documents, but that he is not identified with either the Apostle John or the author of the Gospel of John. So what he's saying there is that most scholars believe that though it is the same writer, it is neither John the Apostle or the author of the Gospel of John. I don't buy that. Okay? But, that's my personal opinion. When was this book written? There's a great deal of academic debate about this, and the reality is that no one is sure. The prevailing time frame seems to be from the 80s to the 90s AD, but there's increasing scholarly opinion that points to a pre-70 AD dating. Just as a side note, I'm not sure I hold to that, and the reason is that in John chapter 2, Jesus is very specific about saying that if this temple is destroyed, it will be rebuilt in 3 days, and he was talking about the temple of his body, but the people that heard him thought he was talking about Solomon's temple. Now, why is that important? It's important because Solomon's temple was destroyed in 70 AD when Israel was overrun by the Romans. So someone in a post-70 AD reading of this would see the poignancy of that in a way that somebody who was reading it when the temple was still standing may not. So I'm kind of iffy about that, but again, that's my opinion. There's also fringe dating. Some people say that it was written as late as the 2nd century, which I will show you later is impossible. And some people say that it was written as early as 35 to 40 AD, but those dates are really probably improbable. Okay? Why was this gospel written? The author himself says why it was written. In John chapter 20, verses 30 to 31, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name. Why did John write this gospel? So that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name. It's always good when a writer will tell you exactly why they wrote something, right? Werner Kummel, in his introduction to the New Testament, says that the purpose of John's gospel is to, quote, confirm and secure Christians in the faith. I like that. Okay? What did I put on the bottom of this slide? Did I not edit this? Okay, the rest of that sentence there, I'm not sure what that's about. I think I was writing something else and didn't clean that slide up, but don't worry about it. Okay, next slide, the Christology of the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John also develops a Christology that is unique from the other Gospels. One of the overriding themes throughout the New Testament is that Jesus is both Messiah and God. But John, like no other, makes this case. That's what happened. Okay, the words on one slide should be on the other. There it is. Okay. In the opening verse, John plainly declares that in the beginning, Jesus, the Logos, or the Logos, however you want to pronounce it, was with God and was God. Throughout his gospel, many references are made to Jesus' deity. Most notable of these are in chapter 8, verses 57 and 58, where Jesus declares, "Before Abraham was born, I am." And in the Greek, that phrase is ego eimi. Now, that's important because the Jews of Jesus' day were reading a Bible that was in Greek, right? They were reading a document called the Septuagint. And while in Hebrew, Exodus chapter 3, verse 14 is Haya, Haya, meaning I am that I am. In Greek, it is ego eimi. So for Jesus to use that specific phrase in John chapter 8, okay, he is very clearly saying to his hearers, he is attributing deity to himself, right? Another indication of Jesus' deity can be found in chapter 10, verses 30 to 33, where Jesus says, I and my Father are one. And we know after this, the Jews picked up stones trying to stone him on grounds of blasphemy because they understood that he was claiming to be God. He wasn't claiming to be a God. He was claiming that he himself was God, equal to Yahweh. Okay? At the end of the gospel, chapter 20, verse 28, the Apostle Thomas, who I think we give him a bad rap because we call him Doubting Thomas, clearly by the end of John's gospel, he wasn't doubting anymore because he says, Ho Kyrios mu, ho Theos mu, my Lord and my God. Contrary to some religious systems which try to split that sentence up into two, saying that Thomas was saying, my Lord Jesus and my God Yahweh, Thomas was not saying that. He was attesting to the deity of Jesus. So that's a very important thing that John makes sure to declare over and over again. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 6, chapter 8, chapter 10. I mean, he on and over, John keeps making the same point. This man, Jesus Christ, was and is the eternal, self-existent one. He is God. All right? That alone is very exciting to me. I don't know about anybody else, but that is extremely exciting to me. All right, so the layout of the Gospel of John is as follows. The prologue is chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. That is the prologue, or as Arturo Azurdia calls it, he calls it the overture. But then again, he's a musician, so he calls it the overture, right? The next section of the book of John, the Gospel of John, is the book of signs, okay? From chapter 1, verse 19 to chapter 12, verse 50, deal with the signs that prove who Jesus is. From chapter 13 to the end of chapter 20 is the book of glory. And the epilogue is chapter 21. And you'll see that develop as we go through it. You'll see that develop. Okay, so we're going to do a little exercise, all right? I am someone who believes that John the Apostle was Jesus's cousin. If you've never heard that before, it's okay. But I'm somebody who believes that. And I think that a comparative study of the gospel accounts in the four gospels makes that plain, okay? So let's consider the following together. In the Gospel of Matthew, James and John are identified as the sons of Zebedee. Now we've got Matthew 4, verses 18 to 22 up. Somebody read that, please. Matthew 4, 18 to 22.
As he was walking along the Sea of Galilee, brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and his brother Andrew, a net into the sea, since they were fishermen. Follow me, he told them, and I will make you fish for people. Immediately they left their nest and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him.
All right. According to Matthew, standing among the women near the cross was Jesus' mother Mary and the mother of Zebedee's children. Matthew 27, 50 to 56. Somebody take that, please.
Jesus shouted again with a loud voice and gave up his spirit. Suddenly the curtain of the sanctuary was split in two from top to bottom. The earth quaked and the rocks were split. The tombs were also opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And they came out of the tombs after his resurrection, entered the holy city, and appeared to many. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they were terrified and said, "This man really was God's son." Many women who had followed Jesus from Galilee and ministered to him were there, looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons.
Okay, let's hold on to that sequence. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Okay. The Gospel of Mark records the same event like this. And we're going to Mark 15, 37 to 41. Somebody else read, please.
Jesus let out a loud cry and breathed his last. Then the curtain of the sanctuary was split in two from top to bottom. When the centurion, who was standing opposite him, saw the way he breathed his last, he said, "This man really was God's son." There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and Jose and Salome. When he was in Galilee, they would follow him and help him. Many other women had come up with him to Jerusalem.
Thank you. So now you see, we've got Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger and of Joseph, and Salome. So now Matthew says Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, or Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. So who's the mother of Zebedee's sons? What's her name? Salome.
Salome.
You follow so far? Matthew and Mark have laid out the exact same order. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons, says Matthew. Mark gives her a name. And Vernon, I heard you, so I'm going to ask you to do this one. Salome was Jesus' mother's sister. So says the Apostle John. Mark's gospel refers to her by name. John's gospel account refers to her by her relationship to Mary. And let's look at John chapter 19, 23 to 27.
When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts. A part for each soldier. The tunic, which was seamless, woven in one piece from the top. So they said to one another, "Let's not tear it, but cast lots for it." Build the scripture that says, "They divided my clothes among themselves, and they cast lots for my clothing." And this is what the soldiers did. Standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple he loved standing there, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." And he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that hour, the disciple took her into his home.
Thank you, sir. So Matthew and Mark point out that Jesus' mother, Mary, was there, right? They point out that Mary Magdalene was there. So now we got two people that we have to figure out who they are. Who is Mary, the wife of Clopas, and who is Jesus' mother's sister?
Jesus' mother, sister, Salome.
Exactly. Here's a chart. You see that Matthew says that Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons were there with his mother, right? Mark says what? Same thing. Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and he gives her a name, Salome. John says his mother was there, Jesus' mother was there, Mary Magdalene was there, Mary, the wife of Clopas, aka Cleophas. So now the question is Cleophas the father of James and Joseph? Because if he is, the only other person there, okay, is Salome, and Salome's got to be Mary's sister. We can already extrapolate that because we know that Salome's husband's name was Zebedee, not Cleophas. And we also know that it was very rare then for a woman to have children and not have a husband mentioned. So this woman who is Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, I doubt that she was walking around with no husband or no husband affiliation in that society, right? Are we all together? Making sense? Okay. Okay. So from Matthew, we learned that James and John were the sons of Zebedee. Comparing Matthew and Mark, we discovered that Salome was the name of the wife of Zebedee and the mother of James and John. I see another error, sorry. From John, we see that Salome was Mary's sister, ergo Jesus and John are first cousins. Could it be that there were other women present with similar names? Possibly. However, the order of the names and the similarity of the language in the accounts is too obvious to be anything but intentional. Jesus' mother, sister, is Salome, the wife of Zebedee and the mother of James and John. Therefore, it's pretty conclusive that James and John were Jesus' first cousins. Now, why did I take us through that? Because a lot of times when we read the Bible, because we have these verses and chapters, we tend to read sections and pull them out of their context and not look at things as a totality. As much as I appreciate chapter and verse designations, sometimes they really are a detriment to Bible study. Why do I say that? Because when Paul wrote the letter to the church at Ephesus, he didn't write Ephesians chapter 1, Ephesians chapter 2, Ephesians chapter 3. He wrote a letter. And so the church at Ephesus sat and heard that entire letter in one reading because that's how it was written. Okay? When Luke took pen in hand to write his gospel, he says that he wrote it to help his friend Theophilus understand what had happened concerning this Jesus, right? And when he wrote the book of Acts, it was the second letter that he had written to Theophilus. So really, Luke and Acts, as we know, are two letters to this guy named Theophilus, who Luke is trying to explain his faith to. And so when Theophilus got it, he didn't say, let me flip over to Luke chapter 16 and see what's here. He read this narrative that Luke wrote to him. He didn't flip over to Acts chapter 4 and read about the early church and then bounce back over. He didn't do that. He read it straight through. And so the point is that a lot of times when we are reading and pulling out verses piece by piece, and we don't step back and look at the Bible as a larger narrative, we kind of miss things that when we step back and look at them, they become very, very obvious, right? One of them being that it seems fairly obvious, at least to me, that John was actually Jesus' cousin. So we're going to do things like that. We're going to read this thing both as an intensive study, but also as a narrative, so that we understand as we progress through it what was happening in the culture, what was happening during the time, why Jesus made certain statements that he made, when he made them, and to whom he made them, those kinds of things, because the goal is to have both a broad understanding and a deep understanding of the text, since it's very obvious that God wanted us to have it, right? I think that, again, I'm going into my opinion here, I think the Gospel of John is so incredibly important to us as believers. And I think a lot of times we overlook it because we pull verses out. We all know John 3:16, and we know John 1:1, and we know John 1:2, but taking it apart while also looking at it from a narrative point of view, I think is going to give us a much deeper understanding and an appreciation for our Lord.